Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine, and welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where I've invited a panel of business experts to go over the morning newspapers, to discuss their own business sectors, what's happening in their own businesses, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. I've got a fantastic panel today. I've got Chris Price, the senior partner and lawyer, family lawyer from Tayntons Solicitors, Sam Holliday, Gloucestershire Development Manager for the Federation of Small Business and ex-editor of the Bath Chronicle newspaper, where I used to work too as the advertising manager, and James Horwood, new to the panel, the Director of Kitchen Garden Foods, and finally, also new to the panel, is Felicity Sang, Director of Hazlewoods Accountants. Welcome, guys. Welcome to Punchline Talks. Thanks for joining us early this morning. I'm going to start off with you, Sam. But before I do, I'm just going to bring up the papers, okay? And the papers all this morning all seem to be about the fishing and the more fishing and the more fishing. Even the Western Daily Press. You used to work in papers. I don't understand why the Western Daily Press is going into that. And there's some of the headlines are really quite aggressive, aren't they? You know, they love it. They absolutely love it. Maybe they went for this because they couldn't actually put about the elections, but I don't know. I mean, look at that from only the Daily Mirror has gone away from the Jersey affair, and the Guardian as well from the papers I picked up. But what have you got there, Sam?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mark. I mean, it's as you say, I used to be a newspaper editor, and it's one of those frustrating days where you know the newspapers can't set the agenda, because the agenda that people are going to be talking about in the news today is all about the elections. And we just had the Hartlepool election announced an hour or so ago, and that's going to be carrying on. So the newspapers knew they couldn't do anything about that, so they went with other things. So yes, they did go on about France, but I can't get terribly excited about that, really. You know, I mean, you know, everyone likes a little bit of that for a bit in a jokey sense. But do you know what? I think what I'm pleased about today in the papers, and Mark, you've always been a glass half full type of guy, but it's been really difficult. I feel like I am as well for the last 12 months to find anything positive that's going on out there. But today's Times has got a headline there, right at the bottom, economy to grow at record pace. And this follows in Punchline in the last couple of weeks. You've reported, you did it this week, that the CBI have done their latest survey, which shows the highest confidence for 7 years. The FSB, who I work for, representing the smaller businesses, best confidence figures since 2014. These are remarkable figures. And the economy to grow at a record pace, which the Times is talking about this morning, is also really positive. Now, I think all of this has to come with a bit of a health warning. We all know there's a lot of small businesses, particularly that are really struggling and are worried what's going to happen at the end of furlough. And that shouldn't underestimate the difficulties that people face. But I think it is good to hear about this sort of confidence, because confidence breeds confidence. And if you're starting to feel good, there was a report that Next, again in the papers today, £75 million better sales than they thought last week. You know, there's a lot of good news out there. So yes, let's not hide away from the difficult news. Let's not hide away from the difficulties, but let's celebrate the good news as well, because we've needed it for 12 months. We've been crying out for positivity. And for once, on the front of the papers, if you can get past the French bashing, you'll find there's some seeds of confidence and optimism. And I think that's got to be good.
And yesterday we ran the story also about Superdry. They've got some very strong sales as well, so good for them too. Thanks ever so much for that, Sam. We'll go over to Chris now. Hi, Chris.
Morning.
What have you picked out from the papers, mate?
Right, well, it's trying to keep on the theme of optimism as well. And one of the stories, which is certainly in the sort of top 3 pages of the papers, although I am reading mine online, I have to say this morning, is the holiday news, which is going to be broken today. So today is the day where Boris or one of his cronies is going to be telling us, in theory, where we're going to be able to start to go abroad to as of the 17th of May. Interesting one for me, really. I love my holidays, but I just wonder whether or not, you know, is it a little bit too much too soon in terms of, you know, we really appear to be, fingers crossed, winning the battle at the present time as far as COVID and the numbers are concerned. Do we need the holidays to be brought in, or really is it potentially going to, you know, open a risk of people traveling far and wide where there's a risk of COVID coming back? So it's an interesting one for me. It'd be interesting to see what countries are on there. I think it's only tipped now to be about 3 or 4, but I just wonder whether or not we really need to be going abroad at the moment, or if we could be staying in the UK and having staycations here for a while.
Well, that's very interesting. Let's ask the rest of the panel very, very quickly if they're going to stay here or go abroad, where they go abroad. Felicity, would you go abroad or would you stay? Just very quickly. Yes, no?
Staying in the UK.
Stay in the UK. James?
Yeah, staycation for me.
Vacation for you. Sam?
Already booked for Cornwall in September. Looking forward.
Okay, and I'm off to Lundy like normal. Well, there you go there, Chris. I think all five of us are going to stay here. And I think, I'll be honest with you, I think, well, I wouldn't go anywhere. What else have you got there, Chris?
Well, the other story is basically picking up on something which Sam said, which again is this sort of positivity. I've spoken before about how everyone sort of adjusted the way that they've been working and what have you. And we saw the next sales figures, which you reported in Punchline as well, and it's been in a smattering of the newspapers. You know, they've really gone extremely high, you know, far higher than anyone would have expected, just showing, you know, with the stores being closed, that online shopping and what have you are now starting to open. So it again, it's an interesting way. How's shopping going to be? Is Mrs. Price going to continue to give the Amazon man a hernia with his deliveries, or is she going to go out and start buying stuff from the shops herself? I don't know, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see how retail goes in terms of online takeaways. You know, we've got restaurants we know locally that are doing takeaways and doing very well because of the number of covers they can do. Are they going to keep it? I think it's going to definitely be a sea change for a lot of people in terms of the way that we do things. But positive news again, as Sam was saying, that's what we need. We need this positivity to you know, keep the markets interested and what have you. And great to see that in a sector that we've thought has really been hammered recently, we've got some good figures coming out. No,
very true. Everybody I'm talking to, it's looking very positive at the moment.
Yeah.
And great to report positive news. Let's be honest, it was really, really difficult over the last year. You know, thanks very much, Chris. I'm going to go over to James now. Hi, James. Thanks for joining Punchline Talks.
Hi.
James, you know, obviously you work for Kitchen Garden Foods. Look, before we go into that, let's talk about your choice for the stories for the newspapers. What have we got for us?
Yeah, so I've just dug out one this morning, and being in the food industry, it seemed apt to choose something related to food. So I've really searched the dregs of news and found something from the Daily Star of all places. This is about a bakery this is the Kenilworth Country Bakery in Australia, who have released a challenge to see if anybody can eat their 1 kilo donut that they're making. So this is a long cream-filled kind of eclair donut, and it weighs 1 kilo. It costs about 12 quid. And if you eat the whole thing, you get your money back and your name on the wall of fame in their bakery. So it was really just to see if
a free trip in an ambulance, James.
if eating 1 kilo's worth of cream donut is possible or not. You know, and to put it, you know, that's kind of the weight of, say, 2 tins of beans. If you're just trying to, you know, imagine 1 kilo in your hand, 2.5, 3 tins of beans. So a big old donut, Mark.
That's a hell of a eat. So I remember eating a 32-ounce steak down by Gloucester Docks. Oh my goodness, look at that. Can you remember that? It was 32-ounce steak at Gloucester Docks, and it was a £5. And I was working at the Citizen newspaper at the time, and after eating it, you had to eat the mushrooms as well and the chips. Okay, otherwise you wouldn't have got it for £5. I really felt ill in the lift going out to work, and I just wanted to go to sleep. I'd never ever do anything as stupid like that again. Right, anyway, so let's go over to Felicity. Thanks, James. That's great. Felicity, what have you got for us?
So there is a lot of positive in the news this morning. I think one of the stories I picked up was actually, I guess, some of the more moral side of it. So we've got Barrett's who are saying that they're going to be repaying some of the rates reliefs that they've received on some of their stores and show homes. And I guess it's quite an interesting position for a lot of companies that have done quite well coming out of the pandemic. What are they going to do where they've taken those reliefs? Should they be repaying it? Seen some fairly high profile brands in the past being criticised. I'm not sure there's a right or wrong answer there. It's just quite an interesting one to sort of consider, really.
No, I totally agree with you. And it's good to see some of the big boys paying it back, isn't it? What else have you got for us there, please?
This one is, again, it's kind of a moral dilemma, really. So this is in the Times this morning. This is the Uffizi Gallery, who are asking for an influencer to actually pay them a fee for using some of their images when they're trying to promote sales of jeans. I think it's in Vogue magazine. Oh, so, you know, how far do we go? At what point does having something in the background mean that you need to pay the person whose door you're stood in front of, you're an influencer going around villages in the Cotswolds, maybe? So again, that sort of moral dilemma of how far can you go with these? how much can you make money before you need to start paying it back?
I think photographers have to be very careful. Professional photographers, if they're taking pictures of buildings in the background, you know, like Lloyd's big building, they've got to be really careful about copyright for that as well. Something on those lines. Well, no, that's brilliant. Thanks very much, Felicity. So anyway, I'm going to go back over now to Sam. And Sam, let's talk very briefly about the Federation of Small Business. I know you've been extremely busy doing your Zoom calls. And what I always like about you, mate, is you have a cross-section of the business community, very similar to ourselves. What's the kind of general feeling out there at the moment?
Well, I think that optimism I talked about is there. I can see it. When we do our networking events now, there was a point where it felt as though they were kind of almost mutual support systems, but now people are genuinely wanting to do business with one another. And I think there's a lot of encouragement from that, but there are still a lot of issues out there. And there's a lot of unintended consequences. I heard this week from a member who runs a garage that does MOTs. And you may remember last year, those of us that would do our MOTs about this time of year had them put back 6 months. Happy days, didn't have to think about that for 6 months. But of course, what that meant is that we're not having our MOTs this time of year again now. So all these MOT garages are opening and have got very little work. And this one guy was telling me he was doing, I think it was 15 a day, he's now doing 8 a week. And it's just one of those unintended consequences I think we're all going to be finding as we go on. I think a lot of businesses are going to have to start paying back the loans that they've had now. A lot of businesses are going to find things like VAT rules that were benefiting them are going to change. Maybe business rate situations will change as well. So, you know, I think a lot of people think it's over. And when we talk about the confidence and optimism, which I really feel, we can fall into that trap. But it isn't. And I think we're going to be heating a lot more quirky. I did not expect that call about MOTs. Hadn't given it a second thought, but their MOT garage is sitting there with no work. And that's going to be the case for 2 or 3 years because we've all got our MOTs put back now to the autumn. So it's a real mixed bag, Mark. And as you're probably finding, every conversation you have with every business is getting a slightly different response. But, and I will say this as a positive to end on again, the more people are speaking positively than I have done for 12 months. And I think we've got to build on that.
Totally agree with you. I think we've kicked a lot of these problems down the road, and everyone talking to, you know, but there's going to be rates and there's a lot of problems with furlough as well. A lot of these companies haven't done the furloughing scheme problem. I mean, talking to Chris, he probably know far better than I do. I know also when I spoke to you in the past, what's happening is that families have all been cooped up. They're now coming out of lockdown. You're a family lawyer. What's been the consequences of that, Chris?
Yeah, no, you're right, Mark. Definitely within the family courts, there is an increase in cases. I spoke about it the last time I was on, and that figure's not changed. It continues to be going up. It seems to be really a growing issue. Families cooped up together, unfortunately, means that when there are cracks in the relationship, those are amplified. And we're sadly seeing that across the board in terms of domestic violence, in terms of children matters, and also divorce as well. The knock-on effect really is there's only a certain capacity within the legal system to deal with divorces, children matters, etc. And we are seeing quite a delay in terms of some matters being dealt with, which is no one's particular fault, but just you know, showing the times that we're at with the numbers of cases that are there. So yeah, it's certainly, it's a difficult time. I think we need to remember that, you know, it's all very positive for a lot of people, but there are difficulties there. It's a difficult time for some people and some families. And we're definitely seeing that in practice.
I mean, also, let's be, you know, the property market as well has been absolutely booming, hasn't it? I know that your firm does an awful lot of property, you know, with dealing with estate agents. How's that, you know, how are they coping with all that?
Well, learning new ways to deal with it, really. I mean, as a practice, the volume of emails that we're now receiving, and Felicity will probably see this in her practice as well, you know, it's massively increased, which makes, in theory, some transactions more efficient, but it also means that the weight of emails you're getting, you sort of get yourself caught up in sort of responding to email and not progressing matters as you would have done previously. Yeah, we're looking at new ways as a practice. We're looking at developing an app, which means that people are going to be able to get all the information about their case on their mobile phone. As I said, emails coming far more telephone updates, that sort of thing. But yeah, the property market at the moment, it really is booming. And we have the end of June in terms of the stamp duty holiday. Is it going to be extended further? I don't think so. although he did leave the door open in relation to that, Rishi, when he last made the announcement. Developers, new builds are ploughing ahead with building. I mean, you go around the city, there's so many new sites that are there and really are sort of, putting up houses as quickly as possible. So there seems to be a lot of confidence there as well. But yeah, I mean, conveyancing at the moment is a really busy market. Everyone that's involved in it, from the estate agent, the mortgage brokers, the solicitors, and of course the buyers and the sellers, they really are feeling how busy it is at the moment.
And I tell the other place is really busy, and I know this from personal experience, is probate. Being kicked down, you have to wait 8 or 9. At one point, it was 11 weeks waiting for it. Now, if you're never had to deal with anything like that before, there's frustration of, A, you're very upset if someone's passed away, but secondly, you don't really know the system very well. If you might have hired a solicitor to do it, or you might have been silly like myself, thought, hey, I could do this myself. And that's been this backlog. But I do think, I know this sounds very sad, and it is very sad, 126,000 people have died, a lot of them elderly. Surely that will also release a lot of capital into society. All these people are going to have this extra money. I've inherited some money. What am I going to do with it? I might, have an extension, might do some windows, kitchens. I mean, I much prefer my mum still to be here, but that's the reality of the situation. Thanks ever so much for that, Chris. Always interesting, especially about the family side. It must be horrendous for some people. Felicity, Let's go over to you so that you're not last this time. Sorry. Felicity, your practice, Hazlewoods, what's your area of expertise? What's your, because we first time on the show here.
Yeah, so Hazlewoods has different specialisms in terms of, we have the agricultural team, the legal team, healthcare and so on. The team I work in actually doesn't specialise, so we pick up everything else. So it's general markets, so anything from small owner managed businesses up to fully listed big corporate groups and everything in between. So it's a real mix, no day's the same, which to be honest makes it really interesting for me working in it.
And what's the sort of main issues? Is it Brexit? We talked before about this question about RI35. What is that?
Yes. IR35, so this is about, it's off payroll working rules. So if you're a contractor, are you actually a contractor or are you an employee? So there's a big case announced this week with Uber where they've said it's been found that their drivers are actually workers. So with that comes various employment rights, and this is where we probably need to refer back to Chris, but various employment rights, but also additional costs if you're paying someone as an employee. It's different to paying them as a contractor. And it's not a black and white area. There are a lot of different nuances to look at. So we're getting a lot of questions from clients about that. And then, you mentioned Brexit. Brexit yes, it's happened, but I think as we're seeing in the press with all the French shipping and fishing stories, it's definitely not a done deal at all. There's a lot going on still. And we've got clients that are either having issues exporting, so one piece of paperwork isn't quite right and that's holding up an entire shipment, or they're trying to deal with repairs from clients, so they're having to import and export multiple times, and you've got all the paperwork involved in that. And they're the very live ongoing issues that we got to get a lot of questions about.
No, it's very, very interesting. And I talk to lots of business people as well, and they're saying that Brexit is not over whatsoever. It's really a big problem. Let's just over the fishing industry itself. And I do really, really feel for them. Thanks ever so much for that. James, thanks ever so much for coming on the show. And also, I just want to say, for posting me your new brand. There it is there. It's called NAF. Hopefully it's not NAF. I'm sure it's very tasty. This is cucumber relish. Do you want to tell us all about it, mate? And also, I've got Wolfies here as well, which is one of my favourites.
Some breakfast, lovely.
Lovely. And I remember going down to London very, very early in the morning and eating this on one of the trains.
There we are. Yeah, so Wolfies is available on GWR trains. Wolfies is the brand we've had in Kitchen Garden for about 8 years. Kitchen Garden is 32 years old now. And myself and the co-owner, James Monet, who is the founder's nephew, really wanted to launch a new brand, launch something, completely different, and really kind of push the limits of, what's acceptable branding and what's not acceptable branding, and what we can call stuff and what we can't, and really just kind of aim at a new demographic. So during lockdown, really, we really gave this a push and developed this new brand called NAF. The the brand is about, it's something for us to have fun with. It's about making, you know, really nice, cool, interesting products, using, you know, all of our 32 years experience we've got, you know, making award-winning products, but branding them very differently, calling them funky names. You know, the one you've got there is called Daddy Cool. We've got a mayo called Big Liquor. We've got Grandpa's Dust, which is a hot and spicy seasoning. So we decided to give this a push. We worked with one of our mates, Ollie Monet, who is the founder's son, and he did the branding for us and came up with a design. So it was really nice to work with a mate on that. And we put it out there, and feedback so far has been really good and really positive. Now, obviously, the branding's not for everyone. That's entirely deliberate. The name is unusual. You know, if you were to come up with this brand 10 years ago, a branding agency would say to you, "You're absolutely mad. You know, what are you thinking of? You know, you can't call something naff because it sounds naff, you know." But that was all deliberate, really. It was about creating something a bit different, a bit fun. And the name came about from kind of, you know, we get that everybody has lots of different sauces in their fridge, loads of different pickles. You know, we get that there's so many, and fridges are full of them. But the idea was that these would not be, you know, just another fridge filler, because they're so delicious and so tasty, you know, and people will consume them and buy again. And so we were talking about this idea of what we could call it. And one of us, I can't remember who, said naff. And we kind of said, we quite like that. And it fitted perfectly with the not another fridge filler. So we landed on it and we stuck with it, and that's where we are now.
Well, you know, as a bit of a brander myself, I actually think it's fantastic. I really love it. It's something very different. It definitely won't be another fridge filler, because I'll be having that for tea very shortly. I deliberately haven't owned it yet because of that. What about Brexit? Has that affected you guys at all?
We've not seen so far a huge impact from Brexit. We had, you know, we were concerned that there might be, you know, delays with supplies of ingredients. There might be, you know, huge price shifts, things like that, in terms of importing stuff to use for manufacturing. We've not been impacted massively by Brexit, you know, in terms of importing into the UK. Now, there's still some way to go. You know, that could change. Pricing, ingredients costs have gone up. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly whether that's down to Brexit, whether that's down to the pandemic or other things. In terms of exporting, you know, so we recently in October got a listing with British Airways for Wolfies, which you covered on Punchline. And, you know, we've had no delays or any problems. You know, Brexit hasn't caused any issues there. Some of the kitchen garden stuff we export to America, and we use a company in Bristol who deal with that. So we trade in sterling, we deal with a British company to export, and we've not found any issues, you know, continuing to export to America via, you know, by Europe or into Europe with some of other stuff. So, you know, I would say so far so good. There hasn't been this, you know, huge scaremongering of kind of, you know, thousands of lorries backed up on the border and, you know, medical supplies, and we're not going to have carrots and all of this stuff. You know, I've not really noticed any of that trickle through. So, you know, so far so good. I voted to remain in the EU, although I was, you know, fairly ambivalent about it and said I'd kind of ride whatever wave, you know, came. So, you know, I'm not an advocate for Brexit or for remaining. But, you know, I'm pleased to see that, you know, some of these issues that were, you know, floated haven't happened, at least to us. I know that's not the case for all businesses.
No, fantastic, James. I just want to say to the guys, I don't know if any of you have tried this. It is absolutely delicious, by the way. James kindly sent us a box a little while ago, which I very happily munched our way through, and my family munched their way through as well. So thanks ever so much. Well, let's go over to the sections. Thanks ever so much for that. Punchline. This week's Punchline has been jam-packed, very, very full. The story that's caught my eye and caught my heart was actually the very, very sad story about Rob Freeman, who sadly passed away at the age of 53. Fantastic business that he built up. You know, he was the owner of it, and in the end, I don't many people realize, but it was actually nearly 40 outlets, 800 staff. This was a guy not very long ago was sitting in this office and we were working together on a PR campaign. And he was such a nice guy, fantastic entrepreneur, who really, really cared deeply about his staff, and obviously a devoted family man as well. So sad for everybody involved there. So that's my story of the week. Felicity, what's the story that's caught your eye, please?
There's a couple of stories that in Punchline that caught my eye really on a bit of a theme, and it was, I guess, the coronavirus pandemic has maybe put the sustainability agenda on hold, and it seems that that's sort of making a bit of a breakthrough back through certainly through the news stories. So Morrison's are reintroducing refillable containers, Asda are talking about selling secondhand clothes, and then the other one was Co-op slashing the price of their food or plant-based foods. So it really feels like that has made its way back to the top of the agenda again, which I think, really has to be a good thing.
No, totally agree. No, thanks very much. Chris, what's caught your eye?
So yeah, slightly on sustainability as well. It was the story about Pandora that you ran, that they're now moving across to man-made diamonds or laboratory-made diamonds. I think there were two things that came to me from that. The first one is that the world's biggest jeweler, which is amazing. But then on reflection, I think, regularly I'm being dragged around all sorts of towns and cities and finding Pandora shops or whatever. So I can understand that. And yeah, it's just a very interesting development in terms of, what we view as being one of the most precious stones out there that we're now starting to grow our own, as it was. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting development. Be interesting to see how the other jewelers respond. And what it does to the diamond market as well. There's a lot of old money tied up in the diamond market. What's going to happen there? So I think watch this space as far as that's concerned.
And it's a huge success in the high street. A lot of people don't realize, though, come Valentine's Day, it's Pandora, there's queues outside, queues of people standing outside. James, what's caught your eye in this week's Punchline?
So this week's Punchline, it was Amazon sales. So Amazon sales topped 100 billion in the first 3 months of 2021. They made just under 6 billion in profit. That's £6 billion in profit, about eight and a bit $billion. And they're forecast to do 100 to 110 to 116 billion in the current quarter turnover. Now, Amazon is just an absolute powerhouse. Amazon is completely taken over. They're a force really that just cannot be stopped. But I honestly think, they've just got it absolutely right. I am a huge advocate for shopping local. I think shopping local and supporting independent is so important, even more so now after and during, this coronavirus pandemic where, the smaller guys have really felt the pinch and are feeling the pinch of the pandemic. Shopping local is really important, but you just cannot stop the likes of Amazon. I spend a lot of money on Amazon. I also spend a lot of money locally and independently as well. But they've got a huge range. They're dabbling in fresh food now. Supermarket groceries. Their pricing is bang on. You can't really find it cheaper anywhere else. Their delivery is amazing. Next day, same day in some cities. Their Amazon lockers, you can go and pick it up when it's convenient for you. Their checkout system is easy. Their returns is super easy and no questions asked. And their customer service is faultless. Every time I've used it, it's just been absolutely perfect, So these guys are making huge sums of money, but I honestly believe they've just got it right. And you won't stop Amazon now. This is a steam train that is running its course and is gonna keep moving forward. I just hope that we can see the benefits of this locally. So more local hubs, more local employment, things like that. But that really caught my eye. And those sums of money, you can't imagine those sums of money. You can imagine, perhaps 500 grand in cash, but when you're talking billions, 6 billion in profit in 3 months is just mad.
It's funny, I can't imagine £500,000 in cash, mate. But there you go.
Imagine it's a big box.
I can imagine you lying on the floor, with all this cash around.
Yeah, that was me this morning.
Yeah. We ran a story. It's funny you should mention that one, because the story before that we ran about the Fresh, Amazon Fresh. We ran about Amazon the hairdressers. I don't know if anybody noticed that. It's an experiment. They're dipping their toes into hairdressing, and that really is about testing products, hair products. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see on the high street one day Amazon coffee.
Interesting.
Here first.
There are Amazon stores, you know, shops in London, and you just walk in and you pick up what you want and you walk out. You don't check out, you don't pay, you just go and grab what you want. And, you know, cameras and weighers and all, you know, all the tech does everything for you. That's kind of scary, but, you know, they're pushing the boundaries of these things. I think it's interesting.
James, can you imagine how much data they're collecting for that sort of stuff? Thanks ever so much. Sam, I'm going to wrap up very quickly. So what have you picked up?
Yeah, just on Amazon, by the way. It's interesting because although obviously you think of them as being the big enemy of small businesses, they're not, because a lot of small businesses trade their wares through Amazon. I was watching Dragon's Den last night, and a lady's got a product for knit things to do with knits in your hair, and she sells everything through Amazon. She's a small company. So, but I always actually sell that to young people who want to talk about starting their own business. I said that started as one man selling books from his garage. So people say to me, I don't want to run a small business, I want to run a big one. I say, great, start a small business and see where it goes. But just as a final thing from Punchline, I mean, I know I'm in a rugby town. I know this. And pre to spending 9 years in Gloucester, I spent 7 years in Bath. So I've been a football exile all this time. But for once, Gloucestershire is football. We've got Cheltenham doing really well. They've got promoted. I'm so pleased for them. But you did a story about Dale Vince this week from Forest Green, who's talking about leading a campaign to stop all advertising of gambling in sport. Now, I'm a Nottingham Forest supporter, and if you look at all their shirts the last 10 years, every one of them has got a different gambling logo on. If you took gambling out of sport, it would be in real trouble. But it's a really interesting ethical question. But the other side of this was, it shows to me again how good Dale is about generating publicity. I've read so much about Dale Vince across every newspaper, and the Punchline to the Times, and it talks about innovations with Forest Green Rovers and football, but all the time he's selling Dale Vince and he's selling Ecotricity. He is an incredible businessman that has put together a football club that he's doing very well, but he's also helping his business. So he, you know, it's ironic him talking about gambling, because he knows exactly what mixing your sport and business can do for you. So all credit to him. I've got a lot of time for him, and it'd be great if they went up as well. But hats off to Cheltenham, and long live football in a rugby county.
I'd just like to say about that, he is a marketing genius.
He is, no question.
Thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks today. Thanks ever so much for the panel, and we'll see you all very soon. Bye.